Alright then. At this point, I've gone through a tier ranking for both the GDI campaign and Nod campaign from the original Tiberium Dawn. But I want to throw this out there. What really got me into doing like these tier lists for the campaigns of Red Alert and Command and Conquer was basically the difference between like the two campaigns and the quality of their missions and everything else about them. To give some some perspective here for you guys, basically I don't really think much of the Red Alert campaign for Command and Conquer. The original Command and Conquer Red Alert, the thing about their cutscenes and their missions and everything like that, it felt like it was very refined, but it also felt like it was basically lacking substance. It didn't have any heart really to it. It's basically just a bunch of actors not really doing anything fancy or anything like that. And the missions themselves were not that much better. They basically felt heartless for the most part. There's nothing in them to make them really stand out. I could go through with showing off the other missions of Tiberium Dawn, but I think I'm just gonna leave that alone for now. And let's just jump into the Soviet campaign and a tier list for it. This is what I'm basically thinking right now. So we'll put this in presentation mode. We'll start the jukebox up here. And let's just get to it. Alright, so a note between the two campaigns for the Allies and the Soviets. I think the Soviets might be a little bit better overall, but well, let's just see if we basically rank them here. Starting off with the first mission, we have Lesson in Blood. That's basically where you have the Yaks and the paratroopers and lots of barrels in a civilian town basically. Your job is basically to kill everything. Civilian, allied, whatever. It's a very interesting mission to sort of start you off. Basically, you get to learn about barrels and how they go boom. You also get to learn a little bit about how you don't want to have your troops near barrels and stuff like that as well, I guess. But the thing about Soviet 1 is that basically it's a lot more flash than is substance, because there's not a whole lot of learning ways to be had basically besides the barrel going boom and using the aircraft. This is compared to say GDI's first mission or NOS first mission from the Tiberium Dawn campaign. In those ones, you're basically controlling units, you're building structures. You're basically really getting into just what the game's basically all about. Here's basically just blah. Here's something to have fun with. And having fun is fine and all, but I can't really say I think much of it really as a mission. So right off the bat, we have our first mediocre mission. It's not deficient or anything, it's just meh. Alright, moving on, we get to Soviet 2A and 2B. This is the guard day mission where you have your little base, and the allies have their little base. On note basically in 2A, there's basically I guess it's a bridge that can be blown up by the allies if they want to. And there's basically no civilian town, there's just harvesting the south west of the map. Nothing really snazzy or anything about the map. It's basically a mission to sort of teach you about stuff. It's basically a little different than Nod's second mission. So let's just put in Admiral, because it basically teaches you how to control your forces and build a base and manage resources and stuff like that. But I will note that 2B is a little bit different. So 2B basically shows that they actually have a little bit more care of that mission. They have a truck that basically runs around between the churches on that map. There's and it's a civilian town the south east of the map. So it's a very sort of interesting operation compared to 2A. So let's just throw 2B in excellent, I think, because here's the thing about the civilian town. You basically get to learn that under civilian churches you'll sometimes find loot, which you basically use to get money based with, which is very kind of important basically for a Soviet campaign. So yeah, let's throw that in excellent, I think. Alright, Soviet 3, Covert Cleanup. So Covert Cleanup is basically the mission where the enemy spy is basically blown up the Soviet base, and you have to basically send attack dogs and eventually infantry and stuff like that basically go after them. It's a lot more refreshing than the other missions basically in the Soviet campaign and even the Allied campaign. And for most part it would be a fantastic mission. But it does have one little glaring problem with it, in that there's basically a sea transport that the spy basically takes halfway through, and it basically takes the spy from one part of the landmass to the other landmass. And there's basically a bug where if you basically blow up that transport, it basically ends the mission. And you get basically a mission accomplished. There's not a whole lot of mission basically after the transport, but it's enough that I can't really say it's fantastic. Guys, I have to say it's excellent, I think. So we'll throw an excellent. That's where it's gonna go. All right, now we get the Soviet 4A and Soviet 4B. Soviet 4A and 4B are basically the introductory missions to the Allied gap generator, and you also get to learn a little about having secondary objectives and primary objectives, because your mission is basically to blow up the Allied radar dome to basically stop the allies from getting reinforcements to attack you with. I'll note that basically between the two missions, 4A basically has lots of options to basically mess with. You can basically blow up their bridge basically to cut off their their pathway from their base to your base. You can basically go and you actually get to see the ally radar dome pretty easily. So you can basically drop your troops basically back there, blow it up. Have fun with that. I'll note that basically with the allied bases as well in 4A, there's also the nice big giant bridge on the back of their base. So if you want, you can actually go behind their base and start attacking them in the back in their construction yard, which is very fun. 4B basically has a very tenacious AI, I guess we'll say. It basically likes to stay around and keep attacking you even after you blow up all their structures. So yeah, that's basically all I can really say about it. Both missions are pretty admirable, I think. So let's throw them both right there. Basically, the thing about those missions is that they're basically here to teach you basically about the allies anti-radar technology and hiding themselves from your view. So it does its job. You get to also introduce to using Soviet heavy tanks and V2 rocket launchers, which is nice as well. Especially since we're about to go over to Soviet 5 Distant Thunder. Alright, so Distant Thunder. This is basically the mission that a lot of people really hate from this campaign, and I'm basically one of them. You're basically on a landmass, and there's basically an island in the middle of the map. The allies basically have their a small little base basically as a start at the top of the map. And what's going to happen is you're basically going to attack that base with your forces. Some allied reinforcements will basically come in, and the MCV is basically in that base will basically go over to the other landmass and basically build a base and start building it up. Now the idea of this map is that you're basically supposed to send an MCV over there to make your own base, but I find that it's not really fleshed out enough to be a really great mission. And more often than not, the only way of it basically being suspicious is to build up an amphibious force yourself, send over and wipe your base that way instead of building up a base. So it kind of really misses the mark, I think, a little bit. Unfortunately. Also, the fact is that you have to deal with a bunch of destroyers in the water and stuff like that for the Allied Navy, and you only got your basic submarines and stuff like that to sort of work with, and they're powerful and stuff like that, but there's not a whole lot of resources to basically work with for this mission. So yeah, this is our first terrible mission for the Soviets, unfortunately. All right, Soviet 6A, bridge over the River Grotsny, and 6B, River Vitskal. So I'll note this is the convoy escort mission, and basically for the two of them, there's basically a couple of cruisers that are next to a bridge that you can basically try and cross, but if you try and cross that bridge, then the cruisers basically blow up the bridge. There's also a bunch of destroyers in the water, basically to prevent you from using subs as well. And there's basically an allied base basically on both the maps. There's also lots of allies guarding the bridge as well, so there's that too. Now, there's basically a difference between the two maps in that basically 6A has the land bridge over it. So you can technically send your convoy trucks basically over to the other side via its land bridge instead of building a transport on 6B, which basically requires you to basically send that transport across and drop your troops that way. Since you've already basically probably done a naval assault basically in 5A, it's not something really special this mission, so I think for both these missions I have to say it's kind of deficient, I guess, because basically for both these missions is this there's basically like a convoy escort mission that basically shows off like how powerful the cruisers are, I guess, for the Allied forces, but it's just sort of meh. It could be better. All right, Soviet 7, Core of the Matter. So Core of the Matter is basically the one where China is basically infiltrated the nuclear plant, I guess, of like the Soviet Empire, and they're threatening to basically blow it up. And your job basically here is like to stop Tanya and all the other Allied forces running around. There's some interesting ideas basically in this map. You basically get to run around and like free like your soldiers or your dogs, rather, I guess. There's also exploding barrels that have to basically watch out for in the beginning. Much like any like non-base-based type of mission for like the regular campaign, they're pretty good. Though I will note that the only like real flaw of this mission is that like there's not like a whole lot going on besides it. So I think it's excellent, but nothing like too like substantial, basically we'll say. Alright, Soviet 8A and 8B, Elba Island. So Elba Island is basically the one where you like get to basically like drop onto like a plot of land and basically battle against the Allied forces on the other side. 8A and like 8B basically have one difference in that like 8A basically has like a sort of like bunch of land bridges connecting your like drop off point to like the Allies one, whereas like 6B basically has like a sort of like solid like landmass that you basically work from. I found that like 8A also has a lot more resources to basically work with as well, so there's that too, I guess. But it's really a lot of difference in these missions, I guess, is the thing. So, I guess I'll say that I actually do sort of like 8A a little bit more. So I'll say like it's excellent. And I'll say like 8B is basically admirable. The thing about like 8A and 8B is that like with 8A you basically have like a nice little sort of defensive setup, but game resources is very hard at missions, so it's very like drawn out. Whereas 8B is a little bit more like hardcore. Basically you have like resources basically close by, and you're still pretty defensible, but it's a little bit more like fast paced, I find, that mission. So there's that going for it. Alright, so Soviet 9, Liability Elimination. So Liability Elimination is basically a mission where that convoy truck's been captured by like the Allied forces, and you have to basically destroy it. And you basically have like actually two Allied forces basically to deal with in this map. There's basically one that's basically going to start out like building up a force, and another one's basically already pre-made. Now you don't actually have to do a whole lot in this mission, and there's even a possibility you can speedrun it by like at the very start of the mission using a V2 rocket launcher to blow up your truck before it leaves the base. So what can I say about this mission? I actually like find this mission to be like a very interesting one, but the only problem is this mission is like the gap clearance basically for the Allied forces. They basically like sort of obscure like the convoy truck, so it's sort of like hard to see where it's basically gonna go. And though you can basically sort of like shoot the truck and like kill keep it from like escaping, it's just like one of those missions where it's like where's the truck? I don't really know. I guess I'll say it's like an admirable attempt to like make a it's got some interesting ideas, like having like this two Allied bases basically fight. They're actually separate forces as well, and you have to basically fight the brown ones basically building up. But it could be better, I think. All right, Soviet 10, the Overseer. So Overseer basically has you like two Yaks and two like MiGs on a couple 4 airfields, and you have some money basically build more if you basically need to. You start with four heavy tanks, and you basically have some convoy trucks you have to escort to like the other side of the map. There's basically a whole lot of Allied forces basically like between you and the objective, so you have to basically figure out how to basically safely get through there without dying. If you basically like get to like the middle of the map, there's basically a construction yard and a service depot you can capture. These are like could be like you can actually capture like some edges that basically appear when you get to that point. But if you basically capture them, some Allied forces will basically start to come from the east on a timer. So you have to be very quick at that point. There's a lot going on in this mission. I actually sort of like it because it actually like sort of has like introduction to like the MiG aircraft and like how powerful it basically is. So yeah, I'll say I like it a little bit. Why not? We'll throw that one in excellent because it's actually a nice little like just diversion for a little bit. All right, Soviet 11, Sunk Cost North, and Soviet 11B, Sunk Cost South. So I'll note this is basically the mission where you have like another sort of amphibious assault to basically do. The allies basically have a gauntlet on like both these like landmasses basically like deal with, and they basically have like cruisers that basically pop in every so often to basically like attack your base. So this is like our first introduction to like the cruisers and like how deadly they are. The allies also land forces on your map to basically attack you as well, and you also have like to deal with like landmines and stuff like that. When you basically get to like the allied side, as well as helicopters and stuff. Lots of fun stuff basically to deal with. Now, I will say that 11A and 11B, there is like one little like flaw I guess with like the missions, in that 11B basically has like a complete gauntlet, but 11A doesn't. So the thing about 11A that I basically found out is that you can actually like use your forces to actually bypass the like gauntlet entirely, and you can actually like send your troops up toward like the naval yard with like your landing point. So it kind of like takes the umph out of that mission a little bit. It's not a terrible mission by any chance, but it's like annoying they can actually do that. So something to throw out. So I guess I'll say 11A is basically just like a mediocre mission because it does have that sort of flaw to it. And then 11B. Also, note by the way, Soviet Mission 11 is actually the one you get mammoth tanks as well, so there's just that going for it too. I think I'll say 11B is excellent because it doesn't really like take away from like how powerful the mammoth tanks basically are. 11A just sort of does because you can basically sort of rush it, but 11B basically sort of focuses you to actually use those mammoth tanks, actually like see how deadly they actually are. So yeah, let's throw that one in excellent. Alright, so we're up to mission 12, capture the tech centers. So capture the tech centers basically has you like initially it's also like this ally like base that's basically right there, and then after you like wipe it out, you basically start to develop your own. There's basically a tech center in like the southwest part of the corner of the map, and there's basically a small little like allied base in like the the southeast. On like an island that's basically in like the north like east of the map is basically the allied like Chronosphere you're after, as well as some tech centers basically surrounding it. And then around all these is basically a bunch of cruisers that are gonna be really annoying to you. So Soviet 12 is very interesting because it basically has like this sort of conundrum, because if you try and build like a Soviet like subpen to sort of like build subs to go after those cruisers, it actually triggers like the allies to actually send their cruisers to actually attack your subpens and possibly your base as well. So does that go in for as well? So really interesting sort of like concept basically how to basically play this one. Not basically what I really like about Soviet 12 is you actually get introduced to like the Allied Tech Center and how powerful it basically is to capture, if you actually capture it. But at this point, like it's just another like sort of like amphibious map, and it's sort of a game. Here's the thing about like Red Alert. The thing that basically sort of like strikes me as being like repetitive basically about it is like the fact that you're like always doing amphibious assaults, especially the Soviets. Like basically for like Soviets like mission 12 here, you're doing like an amphibious assault. For what was it? Basically like amphibious like assaults for like mission 5. You have to do it for like mission 6. 8 doesn't really require amphibious assault, but that's why I basically have it like ranked higher, I guess. Yeah, no, by the way, like this is basically rank low, this is rank low, this is rank low. They're all like the like amphibious assaults here, right? So is it like done a little bit better? I think like 11 was basically done like 11B was basically done all right, which is why I basically have it up there. 12. I'm gonna say this one's admirable because it basically is like another amphibious assault, but at least it has like the Allied Tech Center, so you get to like capture them, and you get to see, well, basically if you do capture, you get to see like the advantages of like the Allied forces and stuff like that. So yeah, let's just throw that one in like Soviet 12. And like admiral, I guess. Alright, Soviet 13A and 13B. These are going to be automatically in a terrible section. So I'll note that basically Soviet 13A and 13B are basically the ones where like you basically like have to destroy the radar domes and then like capture the Chronosphere right after it. And this would be a very awesome mission, but there's basically one little problem in the fact that like if you basically use your spy plane to actually reveal the Chronosphere, it may cause like the Allied forces to actually attack the Chronosphere and blow it up. And it's basically urges as well of this mission as well, because if you basically use like an Allied like tech center in like you did in like the other one and reveal the map, it'll basically reveal the tech center and or the Chronosphere. and that'll basically mean like they'll be able to attack it, the Allied forces. So this one really has like a big issue, like just like Mission 13. So there's that as well. And it's kind of sad because Mission 13 is really interesting because if you look at the map for like both 13A and 13B, you'll notice that it's basically the same map, but it's basically like a little bit skewed. Basically, you'll note that for like 13A, it basically shifts up a little bit to like the north, the map, and a little bit like over to like the west. Whereas like 13B basically has a map shifted a little bit south and over to like the east. So that basically creates a situation where there's basically a bunch of land going down like the east side of the map for like 13 like B, and then 13A so you basically got the landmass to the north. So what can I say about it? It's basically an interesting like sort of like idea, but because of that flaw basically of the Chronosphere, it really like brings it down to be a terrible map is for that reason. So that's really all I can say about it. Also, by the way, you have to do amphibious assaults and stuff like that, so there's that as well. There's also a lot of other stuff that I have to do, so it's not perfect, obviously. But at least I get to show off at least one fantastic map, and that's Soviet 14. Alright, so Soviet 14 is basically a fantastic like sort of finale for the Soviet campaign. Basically, you land on a very hostile Britain, I guess we'll say. The English basically like send like massive forces to like attack you right from the start, and basically land forces to attack you as well. There's basically I think there's like 3 bases basically on this map. There's basically one that's like just directly north of you on like a couple of bridges like connecting to it. There's basically another in like the north like west, and another in the northwest and east, I guess we'll say. Now, the thing about like Soviet 14 is that like the Allies being really aggressive to you and like throwing everything they basically have at you in this mission. So unlike the other missions, it's also a lot like harder basically to basically play as well, because you actually have to basically like plan for like everything coming at you. You have cruisers basically coming from the side of the map basically to attack you. You'll have like artillery basically landing on the map basically to attack you. Everything's basically coming after you basically in this one. So it's a very like awesome finale for sure, Soviet 14. Now, I'm basically half of this list. For the most part, I'm actually kind of like, surprised to actually have so many excellent and admirable missions here. I guess I want to like, sort of throw it out there. Do we consider them all to be like, this excellent? I think I'm actually going to move like, down like 11B here, but it's a throw out there. Just because of the simple fact that like Soviets have so many amphibious missions, it actually does like sort of like knock it down I think a little bit there. There's a throw out there, but whatever. I have to say it's not as bad as I thought it would be here, because I thought we would have a lot more like mediocre, deficient, and terrible missions for the Soviet campaign, but there's only like 7 here basically for the most part, and the rest are basically admirable, excellent, or fantastic. Well, one fantastic, but whatever. All right, well. So, there's DFuxa Plays Soviet campaign rankings. I should probably have seen C in there, but whatever. I suppose that's like self-evident. Let's just throw this here. I'll replace this as Soviet. Alright, there we go. Save. Alright then, so I suppose next we'll have to go through the Allied campaign next, but for now, that's basically it for the Soviet campaign's ranking. So enough basically for like the GDI 1, basically have like, everything being sort of like, admirable or mediocre. And then for now we basically have like, a very lopsided like, amount of like, mediocre, deficient, and terrible missions over here. I guess the Soviet like missions were not that bad compared to like how I basically like ranked the Soviet and like Knob ones, because there's basically a whole lot of like excellent and admirable missions for the Soviet campaign. So I guess there's like sort of in between like the Nod and like GDI in terms of like mediocre and efficient maps, but whatever. How do you rank the Soviet campaign for Rare Alert? I guess whatever. That's basically it for my ranking. I'll come back for the Allied one next, but for now, take care.